I love to make her smile and grin before we start these things. So hey guys, how you doing?
Hi.
Welcome back to another episode, another video here on YouTube for Unbreakable, the Unbreakable Family, and the Unbreakable Marriage. We're here to help you and encourage you to put yourself in a position long term so that your marriage stays unbreakable and that your family stays unbreakable, that your kids grow up and become godly adults.
Yeah.
And you leave a legacy in your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, that you keep that going on and on and on. So we just want to come to you today. We're going to, if you missed the first episode of preparing yourself for marriage, it's on there. It's in here. Go back and listen to that to get to where we're at now. You may miss the build up to this point, but this could stand alone, so it's all good. So today we want to talk to you some more about preparing yourself for marriage. Some things you need to do to make sure that you're ready.
Yep.
We talked about maturity. We talked about having some skill sets. We talked about being spiritual and praying for your spouse to be, and praying once you realize who that spouse to be is. We talked about honest conversations. We talked about questions and premarital counseling. We talked about all that. That's in the last video. Go check that out. But what we want to talk to you today is first and foremost, we're going to do all those things, right? We're going to do all the background and get everything ready. But now we want to talk to you because this is one of the most spiritual things that you can do in your preparation of being married. And it's remain pure.
I'm going to interject.
Go right.
He's kind of got the floor today, but I just want to interject. It's been...
Take the floor.
It's been, in the past, a thing where when a couple got married, that was their first experience intimately together sexually.
Yep.
That's how God designed it to be. And that's how most of the time it has happened until in the last, 50 years?
Yeah.
Probably about the last 50 years, where it has slowly been changing, where people have decided that trying it out, living together ahead of time, having sex before marriage, all of that is not really a thing anymore, and they can do whatever they want to do. I'm here to tell you that...
Which they can.
They can.
However, there's consequences.
But there's consequences to that, and they're putting into motion some things that are not going to be positive for their marriage. And the other topic that Brian and I talk about a lot is that people just have decided, they've stopped deciding to get married even. They've just decided they're going to sleep around, live with somebody for all their life, but they're never going to actually get married. So today we really want to talk about why it's important to be pure in your sexuality, and why it's important to actually get married.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. You're on a roll.
Well, anyway, so we want to just really lay out for you that when you decide to get married, the enemy will definitely want to put all kinds of temptation in front of you to do something wrong.
Yeah.
He might give you temptation to try to lure you away from the person you're supposed to be with and go and do something wrong with someone else.
Yep.
Or he's going to try to get you into situations where you let down your guard and you lower your standard, and you sexually or intimately, physically go farther than what you should. And so you have to watch out. You have to always have a guard. A guard on your heart, on your mind, on your eyes. Just have to watch what's going on.
And I want you pause, so I'm jumping in. As far as the temptation goes, I don't care how Christian you are. You found the one that you love. You found the one that you're going to commit to spend the rest of your life with. It's so easy to justify doing things that you shouldn't do before you actually get married.
Right.
Because, well, I love them, and we've already made a decision, right? We're going to spend life together. We're going to be together forever. So what's the big deal if I go today or wait till next Saturday when we're getting married? What's the big deal? What's the big deal if I do it now or 6 months from now when we actually get married? It's a big deal. It matters. It really, really matters. I know, when we were engaged, did we want to do things we shouldn't do? Absolutely, we did. that may shock some of you who watch this, but we're human.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. And so, we would, we kept ourselves pure, but we did do the whole make out, kiss your face, have fun thing, right? But, and then hands want to go places hands shouldn't go. Thoughts go places that thoughts shouldn't go, because this is the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And soon and very soon, we're going to be able to do those things, but not until we say I do. Not until we're declared husband and wife before God and man. Not until that moment. But it's very, very tempting. And I'm going to tell you what, we raised our kids with the principle I'm telling you about. They've actually taken it to another level. My oldest daughter's been married now 10 years. And she and her husband made a decision as they courted. They saved their first kiss till their wedding day. I would not have lasted. I'm just being honest with you. I would have not made that. So they're better off than we are, which is great, right? But purity.
That sounds weird. I want to tell you, it sounds weird, but it was their decision.
Yeah,
that,
not ours.
That they had something precious. They valued what God had given them, their innocence and their purity. And they valued it to the point that they didn't want to share that with their spouse until they were actually married. And so they made the decision to do that. And our other children also have made the decision that that's how they want to interact with a spouse, is waiting until they are married in their marriage ceremony to even share their first kiss, because they value that so much.
Yes.
And I think that's what's missing a lot of times, is the value on who you are and who your what your purity is, and how God gave that to you. That's missing, that putting the value and the importance on it.
Yeah. And it only sounds weird because it's countercultural.
Yes.
It only sounds weird because it's not the popular thing.
Yes, because even in the church, there are people who live together first. They have sex before marriage. Even in the church, even in amongst Christians, that we are not coming out and being separate, like we're supposed to.
Yeah. So number one, we want you to remain pure, and the number one thing is avoid temptation. The number two thing is, this is also, again, she just alluded to it, not as popular as it used to be, or not as stringent a thing. You need to live in separate homes until you're actually married. You can have one place where you're going to live, but live separately. We had a place that we were going to live in once we're married, but I lived there, and she stayed home with her parents. Now she came over from time to time. We had a meal there. We watched some TV there. We began setting up and putting furniture in, the things we wanted for the two of us together in there. And we began to transition from singlehood to marriedhood. I guess it's the word. If it's not, marriedhood. Yeah, I was like, never mind.
Anyway,
Robin and his marriedhood band. But anyway, we were making preparation to be together. Yeah. And so we did some things together, but we kept ourselves pure in the process. And we gave a time limit for how long we were alone in that room. There's an apartment. And we had people who kept us accountable for that, and did that. So we lived separately. It's not that we didn't share time together, because we shared a lot of time together, but we lived separately until we got married, which makes that more precious at that moment.
We are sharing about this. It is counterculture. I want you to understand, from God's standpoint, He's laid out guidelines for how you have marital relationships. He's laid out guidelines for when sex is okay. And what he's doing is he's giving a river boundaries. Yeah. He's giving them boundaries. And he says if you stay in the boundaries, then the river flows and everything's good. Yep. But if a river goes outside of its boundaries, it makes a mess, and it floods, and it causes problems.
It causes great damage.
Because great damage, because it's outside of the boundaries that were set for it. So when God's telling you you can't have sex before marriage, it's not because He doesn't want you to have fun, and it's not because He doesn't want you to enjoy one another. Right. It's because the boundary line is inside of marriage. Right. Inside of marriage, we have sexual relationships, and then it is precious and special and wonderful and exciting and everything you want it to be, but it's inside God's guidelines, which keeps it safe, and it keeps it from causing problems.
Yeah.
With your conscience, with your physical body, with it just makes it better all the way around. So God isn't trying to be a spoil sport. He's trying to give you the best fun that you can have, and that's why there's guidelines.
And we hate that, don't we? We hate guidelines. We hate. We
just want to do what we want to do.
Being told what to do.
Yeah.
I was just watching a conference that something I'm a part of, and in the conference, the speaker was talking about how he did some things because he hated being told what to do. He changed his living location because where he's at was too restrictive, and he said, I hate being told what to do. It's human nature. We want to be independent.
Yeah.
We want to do what we want to do. We want to act out the actions we want to act out.
Yeah.
It's in honoring God and in honoring each other that we learn how to be able to do the things we want to do within the confines, like you said, the boundaries of that moment.
Yeah.
And if I can't learn how to do that, how can I model that to my children?
Yeah.
How can I model that to my grandchildren? Again, we've been talking in these videos that marriage isn't about a sprint, it's about a long-term marathon. And so the marathon, the end game, is to have generational blessing, to have generational legacy, to have generational ongoing family relationships that happen because of how we set the standard and how we set the foundation. And if you have no foundation, then you can't expect that at all.
Right.
So you have to honor God in how you approach marriage. You have to honor each other in how you approach marriage.
It is ultimate respect for the other one if you restrain yourself and wait for the standard of marriage to then have sexual relationships. So honor one another. If you start your marriage without honoring one another, then where is it going to go from there?
And if you're watching this, you're like, well, we've already had sex. We've already done that. We've already had intimacy. We're not married yet. Let me tell you that there's grace. There's mercy.
Yes.
I would say stop having sex. Move out from each other's place. Find a space to live. Your parents, a buddy, whatever. A friend, whatever. Do that, and then come apart. Separate yourselves sexually and intimately until you actually get married.
Right.
And then when you get married, you watch. It'll become something special and new because you chose and tell the Lord, I'm sorry. I know that's not a popular thing, but it's called repentance. Repentance is just simply acknowledging I did something not according to God's will and changing the way I'm doing it. And so I changed, and I was like, Lord, I'm sorry. I didn't
do it right.
Do it right, and I want to do it your way. I had to do that in my own life because I did not. I had sexual relationships outside of marriage when I was in college. And right out of college, I had that before I ever met Leslie. And so she didn't. I did. I had to repent. I had to come before the Lord and say, and then, so when we came together as husband and wife, after we actually waited and got married and kept things pure, it was special and it was unique. And all that baggage that potentially could have entered our marriage did not.
Right. Because
I decided to honor God and honor my wife to be. So if you've already messed up, in my terms, it may not be your term, get over it. If you've already done things that we're saying you shouldn't do, it's okay. There's grace. There's forgiveness. There's I hate the term, but there's a reset, and you can go forward without feeling shameful, without feeling guilty, and without carrying all of those other relationships into the one you're going to be having for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Explain what being one flesh means.
Being one flesh means I came together with my wife sexually, intimately, and we became one. And so we're together. And one of the good ways to look at that is whenever people talk about us, they don't just talk about Brian. They talk about Leslie. They talk about Brian and Leslie. Or they talk about the fathers. There's no division. We're one. When people talk about us, they don't like, hey, did you know Brian? They're like, hey, Brian and Leslie are doing. Hey, Brian and Leslie. Hey, Leslie and Brian are. It's one. We've become one. It's almost like the names have joined together,
Right.
and they're not separate anymore. It still has the and in there, but you can almost take it out. Brian, let's say, you can take it out. Let's say, Brian, yeah, you can take out the and because we've become one flesh. We are
Right.
so united
Mm-hmm.
that even our friends and our family, and even people who don't even like us, they don't talk about us separately. They talk about us um, individually together as one.
Mm-hmm.
And so one flesh comes from you doing that. And God did that way back in Genesis when he put Adam to sleep
Mm-hmm.
and had minor, some may say major, surgery
Right.
on him and removed a rib and created woman
Right.
from his side. And so he made them one flesh.
Right.
She was made from him to become his mate, to
Mm-hmm.
become his helper, to become his spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so realize that God's done that with whoever your spouse is. He's made
Right.
them for you. You're one flesh. And that only becomes so on the day that you're married and the day that you come together as husband and wife.
Right.
Now let's go back to those of you that may have already done some of this without being married. You've become one flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just take you out of the picture. If someone's a prostitute and they have sex with many partners, multiple partners, they keep becoming one flesh
Mm-hmm.
and separated, one flesh and separated,
Yep.
one flesh and separated. And that's why there's such a high depression rate, such a high suicide rate, such a high drug abuse rate amongst people that work in the sex market.
Mm-hmm.
Be it pornography, be it prostitution. There's a lot of issues inside that quote unquote industry
Mm-hmm.
that happens because they're defying God. They're not honoring Him, for one,
Right.
and so they keep becoming one, separate one. They take it very casually.
Yeah.
And so, but that casualness, even if they don't admit to it, causes issues. They become depressed. They become suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever they do decide to get out of that and maybe have a long-term relationship with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it almost impossible because they're carrying the weight
Right.
of all those other times that they became one. It's like giving away a piece
Pieces
of
of
you
themselves. Yeah.
all along. So there's not a whole you to give away to that
Mhm.
person. That's no reason to stay pure and only give yourself to that person.
And the good news is that God can totally restore.
Absolutely
He
right.
can fully restore physically, mentally, spiritually. He
Yep.
can restore you if you've had those kind of experiences. If you've had a lot of extra outside of marriage kind of encounters,
Mhm.
then sexual encounters, then you can be restored. God
absolutely
can put
right.
you back. But that's why it's so important, is because you don't want to be a broken person, and that's what it causes, because God says it makes you one flesh.
Yeah.
If you break it and have sex with someone else, you are just tearing yourself up,
Over and
tearing the
over
other
again.
person up.
Yeah, because you're carrying part of them with you wherever you go. And so you become one flesh, whether you intend it to or not.
Right.
Well, it's just sex. No, it's not just sex.
Mm-mm.
It's a soul and spiritual tying together
Right.
encounter.
Right.
And so there's a piece of you that goes with them. There's a piece of them that goes with you. And I'm
Mhm.
not talking about the sexual act. I'm talking
Mhm.
about there's something that's interchanged beyond just bodily fluids and intimate moments.
Right.
There's something that's
Right.
interchanged, spiritually speaking, and even soulish speaking,
Mm-hmm.
that happens that carries more. I know, well, it's just sex. Well, you can think that, but I'm going to tell you you're wrong. And so I'm going to tell you that one flesh occurs when we come together as husband and wife.
Yeah.
And
We have a lot of desensitizing to it, I
Absolutely.
think, because of the kind of television and movies and things that are around us constantly. Even commercials that are kind of inappropriate because they're talking about things that never were ever talked about before. Sometimes it's a good thing to bring information forward, but other times it just makes everything so not sacred. Maybe. I think not sacred. That then we don't reserve and think of it as something special.
Yeah.
And that's what God intended it to be, was special and sacred. And so just maybe changing the way you think about it actually helps you to remain pure and to honor God and each other in that.
Yeah, in our culture, we romanticize it, we fantasize it,
Mhm.
and we dramatize it.
Yeah.
And so, I can think of, The Notebook, you know, all about the relationship that they had before they actually became an item. And even then at the end, they do eventually become husband and wife, but that's not what's celebrated. What's celebrated is their sexual relationship, and they're saying that their long-term marriage success was based on their fleeting sexual moments they had when they were younger.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. It's not true. And so, because if you go to the end of the story, I've seen the movie, not on, but on TV, not where you can watch a bunch of other stuff, get the naked stuff. Didn't see any of that, but anyway, seen the movie, and it's like, okay, I get it. And so yeah, they developed a great long-term relationship, but they did it based on the wrong thing. But we romanticize that, we fantasize it. 50 shades of whatever, you know,
Yes. Okay.
We've been gray, we've been dark, we've been free, we've been, and I've not watched any of those. I just know the titles. I've just seen the titles. I don't watch that stuff, because we do that. And what happens is, when we plant those thoughts, we plant those romanticized thoughts, those dramatized thoughts, those fantasy thoughts into our minds, then we bring that into an actual relationship.
Yeah.
And we're expecting that relationship to be similar to this quote unquote perfect thing you saw on TV, or this perfect thing you saw on the movies. Or flip side, you can see all these abusive things that they bring, that they show on TV.
Yeah.
I'm a teenage whatever, the queens of whatever, the divas of whatever, all these very dysfunctional relationships.
Yes.
And they put that out there as that's normal. That's the actual normal way we do relationships, and it's just not biblical. There may be a lot of people who do that. I don't know, but that's not how it works. The housewives of East Pennsylvania. I don't know. Maybe they should highlight the Amish women. I don't know. I'm just saying they do all. Sorry, they just do all this stuff to show you what this one flesh thing is, but they don't do it in a way that it distorts what God says is really right and correct. Which brings us to our next topic in regards to this is covenant, because we'll pick on the 50 Shades thing, because I've got friends who watch that and are like, I don't understand what the problem is, because they talk about how this person entered into a contract with the other person in the movie. If I got that wrong, put comments, let me know. I don't know. I maybe got that wrong.
We didn't watch it.
No, but apparently they had a contractual agreement, right? And so that contractual agreement was whatever it was for however many movies they've made, 50 Shades of Geriatrics. I don't know what they've done. So she's laughing at me, but I'm having fun with this.
Okay.
No. But so they didn't make a covenant, they made a contract, which can be broken, which can be has stipulations that it says you have to do this for me and I have to do that for you. And that's what a covenant is. When God brings you into marriage, it's not a contract. It's not. It's not a contract. It is a covenant. The best example of a covenant that in our country people would understand, in the Eastern world they get it. They understand covenant far better than we do here in the Western world. But the best example is, you've probably seen old movies where the Native Americans, the Indians, use the terminology that you feel correct with. I don't really care. But in the movies, they would have blood brothers.
Yes.
They would cut a spot of the wrist or their hand or whatever, and they would mingle the blood. And so what is yours is mine, what's mine is yours. For the rest of my life, I'll have your back. For the rest of your life, I'll have your back. We have become blood brothers. They created a covenant that was more important to them in regards to any other relationship that they had.
Right.
It was a covenant that they created that was more important than any other covenant that they, any other agreement or relationship that they had, because that's their blood brother, their blood sister, whatever that term was. And so that covenant carried weight throughout the rest of their life, to the point of not only did they take care of that person and have that person's back, they watched over their family and their grandchildren. They watched over everything. If they were to die, they would take in the spouse and the kids as if they were their own,
Right.
and raise them as if they were their own. That's what they would do.
Right.
We use the term godfathers and godmothers that we have in our country.
But that's still
But
maybe
it's-
a little light
It's not as deep as the covenant we're talking about. So when you get married, you're creating a covenant.
Mhm.
In our vows, we took out of the book of Ruth, where it says, "Your people will become my people, my people will become your people."
Wherever
I'll
you
go-
I'll go.
Yeah, and your God's my God. We vowed together to come together completely, totally, and that's beyond the one flesh thing. The one flesh thing can come and go, but covenant remains.
Yeah.
And so we made a covenant with each other as husband and wife that says we are going to do everything together.
Yep.
We're going to raise our family together. We're going to live, and you got to put up with my family. I got to put up with your family. Everything that we do, we do together. That's why people look at us and don't distinguish between the two of us.
Right.
Because not only did we come together as one flesh, we came together in covenant.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I add to that?
No, it's absolutely true. Covenant is the most important thing. You vow to one another, you agree to it, and you sign your marriage certificate, and you have then when you come together intimately, you seal that covenant.
Yeah.
And that is set, and it's for life. God sees it for life. It's important. It's really important. So preparing for that, knowing about it, do some study on covenant, do some study on the one flesh, and just learn and understand what God says about it, because everything that He has planned is so special.
Yeah.
He wants you to experience such a special relationship. I would never trade our marriage for anything, because even though we've had low times and we've had real high times, marriages go through all the gamut of life. But I would never ever back out on our marriage covenant, because I am bound to it. I understand its security, and I understand its importance, and I understand the love that is involved in the middle of it, and not something I would ever let go of. Our marriage is very, very, very important, and we work very hard at it to keep it pure. Even after we're married now, we're keeping it pure and doing the things that we need to do to stay united together. So that's a whole nother thing to bring up. So.
Well, and it is, and we're going to kind of stop here, but I just so you know, while she was really preaching hard about your covenant, she's rubbing my back, like, "Baby, I got your back. You're good. I love you." I'm like, instead of going,
Okay.
but it's all good. Covenant is so important because all the things we talked about preparing for marriage is the foundation for your marriage, but covenant is the major blocks that the other foundation is built on.
Yes.
It's the very bottom, deepest part of that foundation. And if something's awry with the covenant, something's not right with that, the rest of the foundation will hold up.
Yep.
So it's really important to do that.
It
So
is.
again, thank you for being with us here on Unbreakable for the second episode on preparing for marriage. We got more to come. So be sure to like and subscribe to our channel here as you're watching the content. Be sure to share it with some friends. If you got someone that's getting married, been married, thinking about marriage, doesn't like marriage, whatever, just share the content with anybody and everybody. Let them know that, hey, this couple, they're a little off maybe, but they're good, they're fun, and they're real. And so we want to thank you for being with us on this. We look forward to more content coming to you. We will keep pouring it out there. And please join our podcast that we do once a week, the Unbreakable podcast for the Unbreakable Marriage and Family. And know that when you're on here on YouTube, that this content is actually more than what you're going to get on the podcast, but we want you to see that as well, and be able or listen to it. It's not really video. And then across our other social media platforms, we'll put the links in underneath all of this. And like I've been saying for the last couple of videos, soon coming, all inclusive, just us Unbreakable website. So that is coming. We just haven't put that in action. We're developing that. So with that said, thank you again for being with us. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Again, Brian Leslie Fabi with Unbreakable, praying that your family and your marriage stay that way.
Yes.
All right? Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.